When we look at all of these spheres together, the light, the shadow, and the gift of every single one of them, it liberates us to
Mm.
choose relationships in our life, whether it's romantic or platonic, that are actually nourishing, healthy, and mutually fulfilling. And who doesn't want that?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Heal with Beth Jones. That's me, your host. My mission is to bring the power of healing to trauma and abuse survivors. That's why every guest on this show will bring you an amazing story of healing in action. So come on, everyone, let's heal. Hi, I'd like to invite you to get your free copy of Empowered Survivors, the Healing Quick Start Guide. The guide includes an assessment to help you determine whether you're ready to do the deep transformational inner work that will set your heart free from any fear-based emotions that you're carrying and lead you to love-based living. Download your copy of the guide at empoweredsurvivors.com/heal. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Let's Heal with Beth Jones. Of course, that's me, your healing mentor and your host for today. I have with me an absolutely beautiful human being who I really believe is an angel on this earth. She is my friend and my spiritual guide and teaches me so much about who I am as a human being. Her name is Danielle Laura. Danielle, welcome to the show.
Oh, Beth, thank you so much for having me. I am honored to be here with you today.
It's absolutely my delight to have you here on the show today. So it's a conversation that I've been excited about having for a while. I'm glad it's on the schedule and we're doing it today. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, me too.
Yes. All right, let's get started with you telling the audience whatever it is that you would like for them to know about you.
Well, essentially, I love to help people become liberated. And we do that through energetic self-mastery. And
Mm.
we can understand who we were designed to be before trauma, before conditioning, before the world told us who we could be, should be. And we just have that huge permission slip. That's when everything in our life starts to take form in a really beautiful, brilliant, easeful, and fulfilling way. So basically, at its core, I really help people win faster, fully aligned, and with deep fulfillment.
Yes, you do. And that is my experience with you, which is interesting to me because I'm one of those people that had to pull off um, all of those things that people told me I should be
Yeah.
based on my interactions with them before I really took control of myself and did the work to discover who I am, absent those masks, and why I was even wearing many of those masks that I was wearing. My healing journey and my journey to do my work to fulfill my purpose in this life led me to you as one of really two people that I say to everyone who's watching me go through really the professional transformation I've been through. The personal is there, obviously, and they know about that. But this conversation comes up quite a lot in my professional transformation. I get the question, like, how do you do it? Like, how have you gotten to where you've gotten? And I say to people, well, there are two women in my life that are pivotal, and one is April Adams, that was her college name, April Adams Pertwee, who she is now. Sorry, Kyle. So she is the master storyteller who I work with to help me dig deep into my story. But your work and what you've done for me and what you do for so many people is to really help us discover how it is that we're supposed to show up in the world. Right? So what attracts people to us and what attracts us into the energy that we're meant to take in the world and be in the space that we're meant to occupy, that we should occupy as the people that we came into this world to be before all of that conditioning that we have. And I've had a wonderful experience with you. You've taught me so much.
I'm so happy to hear that.
So, why don't you talk a little bit about how it is that you help people like me who know nothing. Well, I shouldn't say nothing because we're going to come around. A question that I have for you, I'm going to ask you in a little bit, but I shouldn't say anything about me. But there is the self-discovery work that I teach people to do, and that's digging down into starting to understand who you are at a deep level within your heart, but then there's the energetic presence of who we are. And that's difficult to tap into on your own, right? The self discovery work that I lead people through is learning your emotional needs and understanding what your gifts and strengths are and how can those become your vulnerabilities, right? It's those types of things that we can see playing out daily in our lives that we're doing. Or not utilizing if there are certain gifts in our lives that we're not using right. That's the type of thing that I work with people on in the self-discovery arena. But yours is really about diving down to the essence of our beings, like my energy field, right? That's what you're helping us to understand. So talk about that for a little bit.
Yes. Okay. So I love what you just prefaced because we need to know emotional cues. We need to know core needs. We need to know all of those things that you help people with. That is so incredibly important.
Mm,
And then, right, when we can kind of when we know that much, right, and we can have that kind of awareness, which is pivotal and foundational to everything else, then we get to look at really your energetic field, your energetic makeup, so to speak, right? And
mm,
it's quite frankly exactly how you're designed to thrive in every area of your life. And this goes way beyond like surface level personality test, right? I'm sure,
mhm.
we've both been in the corporate world. We probably have taken every personality test out there, right? Kind of put it in a box, so to speak, where sometimes it might resonate and be like, oh, yeah, those qualities are me. And other times you're like, oh, no, like, don't fit me in this box, right?
Yeah.
So, what I love to do when we're looking at energetic self mastery is use two systems, well, technically three systems. One is my own methodology around spiritual gifting that I bring in because I believe our most potent competitive advantage in the world and how we give comes down to our spiritual gifting. And
Mm,
the other two systems are human design and gene keys. And these are two systems that are a conglomerate of multiple modalities in one that incorporate the I Ching, quantum physics, astrology, Kabbalah, the chakra system, and genetics that all makes up this amazing mathematical equation, essentially, that is you at the depths of your being. And we go into your light state when you are in your highest magnetism field. What does that look like? Your shadow state, when you are out of alignment with who you really are, what that looks like, right? And then the gifts that get to bridge the gap between when you're in your shadow back into your light. And it's so incredibly liberating because, especially when we've had any sort of trauma in our life, what can happen is we can loop and we can get in stories of shame,
mm,
guilt, and spiral. And what this does is it takes all that emotional charge out of it and it allows you to just see things as they are. And it allows you to see, oh, I was just operating in a lower vibrational state of who I really am. That's it. Here is exactly what I need to know to shift. Let me just do that. And boom, you're back in your light state, right? And that is so liberating. So that's at the core what I do in the systems that I use.
yes, and I was just thinking about that in my own life and that shift that I have had. And there's that phrase, dark to light, and you're talking about operating in the shadow state versus the light state, right? And a lot of the work that we do when we heal is to come out of our darkness and into our light, which um, I feel like is where we probably need to be in order to get real benefit from what you're teaching because you're not in that emotional loop that's keeping you down in the shadow state, right? Where you can't really even begin to connect with what your light state actually is because you're so encumbered by everything that you're carrying from your experiences, right? And so I'm reminded of that. It's a journey from darkness to light when you're going through a healing process like I've had to go through in order to be able to take my own self-discovery to a whole new level and
Yes.
understand myself energetically. You know, the other thing I would say about it is my experience with you. is that I know that everything that you say to me is true for me. Right? So there's nothing that you've ever said to me that wasn't 100% accurate once I understood it, right? And I really could see it in my own life, right? And I've embraced this fully as I've tried to figure out this way of like, how do I show up with people? And you're not telling me to do anything based on my energetics that are contrary to me or that feel weird or like I'm acting or playing or pretending or not being me. You're not telling me to do. You're saying go be you, and that's what I'm doing. But you're helping me to understand what does it mean to go be you energetically, right? And that is there's so much power in that, and the gifts you have to do that are just amazing.
Thank you.
So you mentioned astrology, and I'm going to ask you this question. I know I've asked you this question before. You know, you've mentioned energetics, and we'll keep using that word and talking about it with what you do. The master class I'm in with you is called Energetic Self Mastery, right? And so that's really what you focus on. And I came to believe and to know fundamentally at my core a long time ago that we truly are just masses of energy that are connected. This entire world is just one big giant energy ball that you and I in our physical forms in this moment are just small, tiny little pieces of, right? And so we are all connected energy, right? Which, you know, explains a lot of the reason why when somebody goes out into nature, they feel it in their soul and in their body because you're getting back to the energy source that is pure, right? And more natural, right? And we're connecting with it, right? So there's so many, I mean, energy explains so many of the things that happens to us and you know what we're about. I have done a lot of healing work at the spiritual level, soul level, karmically, right? And that's part of my path and what I meant to experience to help other people to understand what's possible in healing painful relationships. So, you know, I've healed my relationship with my grandfather who died 20 years before I started my healing journey. I've healed all of that between our souls and karmically, right? So at the energetic level, right? So I have a lot of experiences like this. And then I've also studied astrology for myself for a really long time. And I have a woman who I work with who knows me now where she's part of my tribe and it's like a dialogue about what's happening, right? You know, and so I know it's very real once you understand what's happening. So I feel like human design and gene keys is like another language for describing the same concepts and principles about who we are that I've learned, I've come to understand through the astrology overlay. So can you just talk a little bit about that, about the human design and Gene Keys aspects specifically? And you mentioned astrology in a line of other um, information sources. Is that what we call those that are
Yeah,
feeding into
we'll
that?
call
So
them information sources. Exactly.
can you
Yes.
just talk about that a little bit more specifically?
Absolutely. So with astrology, it is, one of the things that make up your human design, one part of it. What I like to think is because I actually was involved in astrology before I found human design as
Mm,
well, similarly. So I like to see astrology as an amazing guide point that shows us different parts of ourselves, different qualities, how we can use those in various parts of our life. For example, our moon is potentially, how people view us, right? Our Venus
mm,
sign is how we love, things like this, right? But when it comes to human design, what I loved so much about it right off the bat is that it's basically like our GPS. It can show us in any little nuance of our life exactly the path of least resistance on how we get to thrive. And so it's just kind of like astrology on steroids, basically, right?
mm.
Like even deeper and shows us even more in a practical way, right? How do we apply this? How do we use this to these every little variant nuances of our life? Right. So I think astrology overall, if we're just looking at astrology as a more high level approach, it kind of tells us about who we are, and human design helps us live it.
Yeah, yeah, yes. That makes sense. I find a lot of the things that I've been told, uh, well, I shouldn't say a lot. I'm going to say everything that I've been told about myself with the astrological overlay is exactly the same as what I hear from you from a human design and gene keys standpoint. Um, and I guess maybe it is a how to apply it. This is who you are. This is how you apply it. This is how you use it, which is what you teach me all the time. You're telling me
Yeah.
all the time. So yeah, which is just amazing. So it's been a really beautiful experience for me to spend time with you and to get to know you and everything that you've taught me. So I'm super grateful. And I tell anyone who asks about you. And so here I am doing it again.
Oh,
This is
thank
the
you, Beth.
Danielle Laura. This is the woman. So
Thank
yeah, so
you.
if you're interested in learning more about your human design and gene keys, this is the person who you need to be talking to. Yeah, that's great. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, and I'm gonna let you talk a little bit. I want to look up one more thing that's gonna come back to, well, because I have to go back through some of mine. No, actually, you know what? Let's do this before I want to talk about we're gonna talk about the relationship spheres because I think that's very cool, right? Because um, I talk about being able to show up in love and relationships is something that I teach people about. And relationship spheres, knowing who you are and how to do it and you're energetically is really important. And I think people will enjoy hearing about that. So we are going to talk about that. But I just wanted to talk with you for a second. I don't have my notes here, but you can answer the questions for us. So my profile lines in my
Mhm.
human design are 1, 3.
Yeah.
So tell us what the one is.
Yes. So one is the investigator, right? Which hilariously enough, with your whole background and everything, right?
Yes.
You are like, you guys are like the secret FBI agents. You leave no stone unturned. If there's anybody that's most like detail-oriented person that is going to find the root of everything, it is a one line. Yep, absolutely.
And which when you first said that to me, it made me laugh. And it was one of those when I was like, okay, this is truly me. What you're telling me is truly me, what you're reading in my human design. So I came to know that as my ascendant sign astrologically because I'm Scorpio rising. I'm actually double Scorpio, Scorpio rising. And that is very much about being the truth seeker, right? And
Yes.
bringing secrets to lies and bringing out the truth and bringing light to darkness, which is what my entire life is about. So when you said that when the profile line 1 in the investigator, I was like, of course. All right.
Right.
So what's profile line 3?
So three is what is called the martyr. You're not an actual martyr. It's just called that. It is all about trial and error through life. We learn through experimentation, right? So I have a three line as well. We are not the kind of people that people could just tell us, oh, this is the way to do it, and we just can listen. We have to live it for ourselves
Mm,
to know what is true for us. But the really cool thing about three lines as well is it makes us extremely relatable because we've been through all
mm,
the things, right? We've been there, done that, have the t-shirt, and you teach from a very lived experience. But the beauty about your 1 3 combination is yes, you teach from your lived experience and your embodiment, which is so
hmm.
powerful, but also you have the foundation of mastery with that one line to really bring it home in a way that many people don't know how to, right? So anybody that gets to work with you is very, very lucky.
And so and thank you very much for saying that. I appreciate that very much. I became the healing mentor before I ever even met you, which
Yes.
what you've just described is why that's why I'm known as the healing mentor because I heard this phrase recently, my life is my laboratory, which is totally true, right? Everything that
Mhm.
I
So
do and
true.
everything that I offer to other people, the ways I help people is based on my lived experiences. As a mentor, that's what I do. I give you my lived experiences because I've been there and done that. So, anyhow, so I just wanted to touch on that because it's, if you know me and people who've known me for a while are like, oh yeah, that's all definitely her. And people who are just getting to know me or can see that, there's a lot of truth in my
Mhm.
human design for me to be doing the work that I'm doing now is the work that I'm meant to be doing. What I think is interesting about my journey is my life is, I mean, it's like one of the greatest ironies of my life is that I lived for so long just as a survivor, just bumbling through my life without any awareness of any of this, including the fact that I was a survivor and I needed to heal. And then I had my life altering event and this very, very profound healing journey that I've been on to discover, oh, because everything about your life is to have these lived experiences so you can go share them with other people. The irony being that I had to live my life so that I
Yeah,
could then share it with people, right? So it's actually written for me in my makeup and who I am energetically,
literally.
right? So that's pretty
Yes.
cool. I think it's pretty awesome to know that. So it's just a great example of the truth of it and how it actually works, right? So it's
Yes.
very cool. And you've helped me to understand that at a very deep level, which is has been wonderful. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about relationships
Let's.
and the relationship sphere. So this is an exercise that we did a couple of months ago, which I found to be um, really helpful in sort of getting to a place where we ended up with what we call the mantra, the wealth mantra, my wealth mantra, right? About how I um, feel the best when I'm in my light state. Let's use that phrase, when I'm in a light state in a relationship, both for me and the other person. What does that look like, right? And it was a whole exercise to take us through that based on our human design and gene keys. So tell us a little bit about first of all, a little more of Danielle's definition of what are the relationship spheres.
Yes. Okay. So in our gene keys, we have all different kinds of spheres for our life work, our relationships, our wealth, our inner, just what lights us up, our purpose, all the things, right? We could look at any domain of life. But when it comes to relationships, we have what we call a relationship sphere that makes up four different points, basically within us, that show us in various aspects of our relationships what our attraction is, meaning what are people magnetized to within
Mm,
us? And what also are we magnetized to in others, right? This is really important for us to be able to choose healthy partners, right? And be able to observe, are we being magnetized to something that is a light state or a shadow state? Because if
mm,
we're most of the time we are attracted to something in our shadow state because of trauma or conditioning. So this is a beautiful thing that allows us to free ourselves from that in a way, right? And evaluate maybe past decisions we've made with partners and can see where that has been the case. And it doesn't always have to
mm.
be romantic either. It could also be just platonic relationships, friendship,
Yep.
etc. And then we have our IQ sphere, which is all about our intellectual needs and capacity in relationships. Both what we give intellectually as well as what we need is a non negotiable in relationships on an intellectual level, which is amazing to know, right?
Yes.
Then we have our EQ, which is our emotional quotient in relationships. Again, what we bring to the table as our most potent superpower emotionally, as well as non-negotiable, what do we need emotionally as our top non-negotiable energy, right?
Mm,
And then we have our SQ, which is our sentient quotient, which this is our spiritual energy. This is also how we feel sensationally in our body. So this is really showing us very connected to the nervous system as well and spiritual connection of what do we bring spiritually and somatically to relationships? How do we help others feel safe? What is our biggest spiritual gift that we're giving? As well as what do we need non-negotiable with that in a partner? So when we look at all of these spheres together, the light, the shadow, and the gift of every single one of them, it liberates us to
mm.
choose relationships in our life, whether it's romantic or platonic, that are actually nourishing, healthy, and mutually fulfilling. And who doesn't want that?
Everybody, I want that. You want that. Everybody wants that. And I talk about this all the time. That's ultimately what we're after is getting to healthy relationships in our life and learning how to show up and love in those relationships, whether they are romantic or platonic relationships, right? That's when we're in our best place is when we are showing up in love in relationships. But you got to know how to do that for yourself, right? And who are you? How do you do that, right? So
Exactly.
what is talk a little bit about the exercise that you took us through to identify our four spheres.
So we looked and we did this, we split this up over 4 weeks too. So it wasn't
Mhm.
just like a quick thing, right? Because
Yes.
there's so much
Good point.
integration.
Very
Yeah.
good point. Yes.
Yes, there's so much integration with this, right? And it's
Yes.
something, and you mentioned something earlier where it was the energy, you said something around like none of this was contrary to who you really are. It was true when you were looking
Mm-hmm.
at like when you really look at it, it's absolutely
Mm-hmm.
true for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the beauty too. This can be very eye-opening and in an amazing way in the sense,
Yes.
woohoo, I'm making the right decisions. Or, oh my God, I see now where my trauma or my conditioning has been steering the wheel in my relationships.
Which, by the way, I have seen, I mean, I've seen that for myself, particularly when you talk about being in the shadow state, right? And
Mhm.
a lot of this, I think about sort of that dividing line at the life altering event that put me on my healing journey. And I think about how I was living my life, things that I was doing, relationships that I was in before I started to have my healing and this awareness and discovery about myself. And I very much operated in the shadow state of a lot of things that you have told me. And I also say, I can look now from time to time, like if my energy is down, sometimes I can point that to being in the shadow state in one of these spheres of my life, because you mentioned there are so many of them, right? And um, it's like an energetic drain, I would say, which I think is why you call it the shadow state, right? Because you just know, like, it just doesn't feel right because it's contrary to who you actually are, and you're not in the place that you should be. But again, we get there because of all the trauma and conditioning that we go through, right? I mean, it's just what happens to us as part of our human experience. This is how you clean it all up, right? It's getting this
Exactly.
awareness so you're not in that state. So I do find that I would say I probably was more in my shadow state across the relationship spheres when I look back at relationships pre-healing journey. And now that I'm in a different place, the relationships that I have now that are rich and very soul nourishing and fulfilling relationships for me, I'm very much operating in my light state. And
Yes.
so that is like that eye opening, definitely that eye opening. Oh, that's why that was happening. I get it now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that essentially, was the exercise. We got to see in each of the different spheres what your light state is, right? When you
Hmm.
are totally in alignment, we looked at what that shadow energy is for you. And we looked at the gift energy of if you are in your shadow, how do you get back into your light?
Mm.
And then we did, of course, some reflective questions around where have we seen our shadow overtake us in relationships before? Where have we seen our light state come out? And now that we know better, how do we want to apply this to our lives moving forward, right? And we made some sacred commitments. And then we ultimately came up after the end of the 4 week series, we put all of it together and we came up with our relationship mantra, right? Which
Yes.
was the light states of each so that you know how to operate in your absolute highest in your relationships.
Yes. Yes. I think I called it my wealth mantra. It's my relationship mantra. You're right. Because we did a wealth mantra too. We've
We
done that.
did. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, we have done that one. So, um, but what I have written here is my relationship. So we'll read that. I'll read it out here in just a little bit what we ended up with. So the gift, so I think the shadow state and the light state should be, I think, understandable to people who are watching this or listening to this, because I think most of us would understand light state and shadow state even without the context of the conversation that we're having here. But I think we've said enough to sort of clarify what both of those mean. You've used, along with light state, shadow state, you've used the word gift when you've been describing that.
Mhm.
I think about the gift as the bridge
Yeah.
that takes us from one place to the other. And you could actually, I guess, be going either direction. You could be using your gift to come from shadow state to light state, or you could be using something that's the complete opposite of your gift that actually could be moving you into shadow state. So, will you talk a little bit about the gift and about how that works and how we should use it?
Yes, the gift is really the bridge that brings us back to neutrality so that we can then go back into our light state essentially
Mm,
or our shadow state if we're going to be in a real spiral, right? It can work both ways. But the biggest thing, I like to liken it to when we're driving a car, right? And we are, we're putting things in reverse, right? We have to go through
hmm
neutral first, right? Then we go to reverse, then through neutral back to drive, right? And we always have to go through neutral. We never bypass
mm,
neutral. So the gift in our gene keys is the neutral in a sense. It brings us back to that equilibrium state so that we can then have the momentum to move forward again. So it's an energy that we
yes.
get to use as our neutrality base to then gain that momentum back to go into our light state.
Yes. And there's nothing wrong with being in that place of neutrality.
Right.
I feel like sometimes it's a pause
Hmm.
state, and particularly when you're coming out of the shadow state, because that's a lot of work to get
Oh
out
yeah.
of shadow state.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
pausing for a moment, or maybe a lot of moments,
Yeah.
in that neutral state is okay and can be a good thing.
Yes. 100%.
And what do you think about the work to get to light state, right? So a lot of work to get out of shadow state to neutrality. Is it equally, because it's not challenging work, it's more energetic. I mean, I feel like it's more uplifting. Like you can like feel it. It's like momentum building energy when you're moving into your light state. But in terms of energy expenditure, whether it's light or dark energy, moving from neutrality into your full light state, is it the same
I
coming
find
out of your shadow state to neutrality?
I find going from our shadow state to neutrality takes a little bit more because we're working against ourselves a little bit, right? There's a lot of
Mm,
resistance that comes up when we're working with our shadows because it's
hmm
hard, it's tough.
hmm
We don't
hmm
like the truth hurts. That's a real phrase because it's
Yes.
real, right? So
Yes.
when we face the truth, right? Of course, it can be exhausting and it can be draining. However, once we get to that neutrality place, I
Mm,
find it's very quick to go into our light because once we have integrated neutrality, it
hmm
is just, it's like a springboard. We can't help but move forward.
mm.
It's like an invitation. It's almost like this volcano erupting out of our souls of greatness, right? Because we're
Yes.
now ready. We've integrated, we've worked through the shadow, we've come to that neutrality. Now we can't help but go anywhere but forward. So I find
Yes.
that process from our gift to our light is much quicker than from our shadow to our gift.
Yes. And I think it makes a lot of sense because the light is where we're supposed to be when we're optimal. So getting to optimal from in the depths of the pits, completely suboptimal, it's a lot of work
Yeah.
to get there. And then when you're going to where you're optimized, it's quicker to get there. So yeah, that makes sense. All right, so I am just looking at some of my notes going back to our sessions on the spheres because um, I really would like to give people a real specific example of this from myself. So the one that I've popped onto here is the work we did on the EQ sphere. So first of all, do you want to just mention again what the EQ sphere is?
This is our emotional quotient. So, this is very much what our greatest superpower emotionally that we bring to relationships, as well as a non negotiable that we need emotionally in relationships.
Yes. Okay. So my light state for my human design um, is ecstasy, and my shadow state is seriousness, and my gift is delight. So um, let's just talk about how this works. So first of all, let's start at the bottom, right? I'm in my shadow state.
Mhm.
So What does that mean? Because what I have in my notes is this is my shadow state that repels people, right? And the
Yeah.
word was seriousness. So what does that mean about me?
Yeah. So when you're in your shadow state emotionally, you may shut down and become very serious, to the point of now, sometimes serious can be just non emotive at all, where maybe like
Mm.
you're stone cold, like the ice princess, right? Or sometimes the seriousness might be like an intensity, right? That Scorpio intensity and passion that maybe is too overwhelming for people, right? Almost too penetrative, if that makes sense, right? So that's where, if you were living in that state emotionally as your normal, that is going to be repelling to people in your life.
So back to what we were talking about before when I was saying that I could look back at a lot of these things and see that that's pretty much how I lived in my relationships um, before my dividing line that day. Um, what you described as emotionless, that was me. And so I don't have the like the fiery aspects of the Scorpio personality traits, and that's because I'm double Scorpio, so it basically cancels each other out. It's like
Mhm.
a which is a cool thing. I'm actually quite happy about that. But for me, the way my shadow state showed up was much more being emotionless. And I've described myself that way as I've explained to people where I lived and how I was living my life. I was very, very lonely and alone. And that came from my inability to connect with people. And a lot of that was because, like, I felt a physical constraint around being able to let people in, but what that also meant is that I wasn't expressing any emotion whatsoever. So all of my emotion was going inside of me, and that began when I was 5, and that went on for 45 years. That I just put emotion, just stuffed it inside of me until, eventually it has to come out, which it does at some point. It's not going to stay in there forever for most of us, hopefully. But that is how I would describe myself as emotionless, and that definitely was the way that I showed up in my relationships and how people would have seen me. So I was very much in that shadow state before I began my healing journey. Again, because of my trauma and human conditioning that I was living under.
Right. And how liberating to see that.
To have an explanation,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Liberating, yes, to have an explanation, but also like, oh, wow, so that's what was happening all those years. I was in my it's definitely in my shadow state where I didn't want to be, right? And the repelling people, I think that is probably true, but not like people were repulsed by me, but just I was like, it was like just kind of let me just keep you out there, and I'm going to do that by just being emotionless and not really engaging with you in any kind of a deep or vulnerable way, right?
Right.
Very surface level engagement with people, which
Exactly.
worked perfectly in my professional environment, but in my personal life, I pretty much lost everyone, right? Cast them out and just said, I don't need anybody in my life is what I did, right? So my shadow state actually cost me quite a lot during
Yeah.
those years. But yeah, that seriousness. Okay, my light state is ecstasy. And so what does that mean for me?
So for you emotionally, when you are in your best form, you feel like ecstasy, like your energy feels like people can't get enough of you, right? Like you are their drug in a way, right? Like you have the most brilliant penetrating light that sees into people, that holds space for them, that allows
Mm.
them to come alive and feel safe, right? And that is your greatest, most potent emotional gift that you bring to relationships.
Which I know that what you're saying is true again because I've already said that I know everything you're telling me is true and it's me at my core. But this goes back to the great irony of my life, which, the being, living in my shadow state of seriousness is also one of the ironies of my life of what I do today as the healing mentor. But what you're describing for me when I'm in my light state in relationships, that feeling of ecstasy, that's sort of what I understand to be a magnetism. Just it's
Yeah.
I just basically exist and people are drawn to me because of the very positive and happy, ecstatic energy that I'm putting out about, and it comes out in me a lot when I talk about my healing journey and where I've gone, where I've come from, because it's such a huge transformation, that radical transformation, literally, that I've been through personally. But one of the things that I struggle with and remaining in that light state all the time, which first of all, I mean, I feel like it's me like being quote unquote on, like I'm on, and nobody can be in that on light state, I think 100% of the time, because it is work to be there, right? Even though it's natural and where I should be, that is still work. So am I right about that? Like remaining in your light state 100% of the time is really not something that any of us should be trying to achieve. It's just not
Yeah,
realistic.
because, we're real beings and we don't always experience the best and highest, greatest emotion of all time. If we deny ourselves the truth of those lower vibrations that we might feel sometimes, that's when they're going to actually overtake our life.
Hmm.
Have to be able to be honest to say, you know what, in this moment, I am in my shadow and I'm going to be here because I need to work it out. Right. And that's
Yeah.
okay. It's not realistic at all to expect that no matter what happens, we're just going to have this ever never ending light state. No, that's not real. If we are always in that state, we are probably cutting ourselves off from feeling truth.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think what you said there is important, is giving ourselves permission, and acceptance to be in our shadow state, and recognizing that, I mean, it's a gift to know that's all that's happening to me is I'm in my shadow state right now. And oh, by the way, I can get out of it. I know what my light state is. I know what it feels like, and I can get out of my shadow state into my light state, right? And I'm going to come around to that because we're going to talk about the gift and how I would bridge that, how you do that. But on the light state, one of the things that I struggle with is, and this goes back to a lot of work that I've done around my 5-year-old inner child, who is the first one who was abused and traumatized. Right, I have 3 inner children. She's the first one that experienced abuse and trauma. And her entire mission in our life has been to hide. If we hide, we can't get hurt.
Mm,
And that doesn't really work when you're the healing mentor and you have to be public, right? And out and connecting with people, and
right.
spreading my light, my ecstasy, right? Being in my light state, right? But it's something that I've really had to work on. And I see those, like the light state that I should be in, where I'm giving my happiness and my joy and my ecstasy to other people, balancing out with the work that I've had to do as I move from shadow state into light state, was also about being able to help her to move to a place where she doesn't want to hide and she wants to be out there being vibrant and seen, and right. So that's, it's been an interesting like parallel understanding for me about my inner child, and how that's now showing up in me doing the work to have this very happy and energetic and happy state that I'm in, that is my true light state.
Yeah.
Mm,
Oh, I love it.
yeah. It's been some interesting work. So I do struggle a little bit with being on the ecstasy side all the time. I think for natural reasons, as you were saying, being there 100% of the time is not normal for us. But I've also had an additional, I feel like an additional layer of healing that I've had to go through to be in that state, right? Particularly with her. Now, my gift, the bridge for me, my gift is delight. And so, what does that mean for me? If I want to transmute my seriousness into ecstasy, and I'm
Yeah.
supposed to do that through delight, what does that mean for me?
Yeah, so we can kind of think of a synonym here would be joy or playfulness, right? It's coming back to what actually just allows you to feel like blissful, right?
Mm,
Delightful, right? Whatever that is for you, right? And doing that. So it's the perfect thing because when you're right and you're in your zone, you're mad at the world or whatever the situation or yourself, right? It could be anything. The quickest way out of that is to do something that lightens the mood, right? So
yes.
sometimes whatever that might be for you, or it could just look like play, could look like just finding joy, going to doing your favorite thing, right? That's going to bring you back to that neutrality place, which from there you will naturally become that ecstasy light state again.
Yes. Yeah. Also something that I work on. Is
Yeah.
being joyful. I'm actually doing things that make me joyful and feel that bliss state. Play is where things we might consider to be play is where that comes in, right? And I think as an adult, you have to figure out like what is that? What does adult play mean for you, right? And what brings you peace and joy and bliss. And so I do a lot of work focused on that delight in my life and how do I get it. So I've been going through a lot of house beautification in my home that I just moved into recently, and that's part of that delight and helping to keep me in that light state um, of ecstasy, like great joy, working on all that time. So I just think it's cool. It is really a cool thing, and I wanted people to hear that and to see us talking about that. So the real application of the EQ sphere in my life and how I know how it's shown up, shadow state and light state, as I have grown and gotten a greater understanding of who I am, right? I mean, I think about the work I do with you as part of my self-discovery work. And we talked about that a little bit already. It's just a deeper layer to the core of me and the essence of who I am. So it's cool to have a real example of how that's truly shown up in my life and is a truth, all my truth, 100% of it. So, right, it's very cool. Yeah.
And thank you for sharing that as an example, because it's one thing to like hear about it. It's another thing to
Mm.
hear the actual example, right? And I'm sure people are listening are thinking about, oh my gosh, I want to know what mine is now, right? And
Yes.
so
Well, yeah, because we could go through this exact same conversation about the other three spheres in the relationship and then every other sphere in life, right? I mean, we could have the same one where I could tell you, oh yeah, this is me in shadow state and this is me in light state, right? I can see it, and in relationships in particular, because part of my journey has really been exploration of relationships. In fact, that's how my journey began. My healing journey began was with the barrier that I felt engaging in deep relationships with people. And that's why I went to hypnotherapy, which was a life altering event that I went to that sent me on this pathway. But I had no idea what was ahead of me. I just thought I was going in for, just a quick, go spend an hour on her couch, lying down, and you're going to let out whatever it is, and you're suddenly going to be able to engage with people. Well, was a bit naive what I
right.
thought about that, right? I've had a very different experience, obviously, but ultimately that my entire healing journey has been about that. That was the pivot point, and that's what led it is about being able to engage in relationships with people. And so I've learned a lot about that. And so, it's natural that I'm taking the time to really understand that about myself so I can get it hopefully more right than wrong. And so I think it's true for all of us, right? And something that is valuable for all of us and really, really being able to bring the highest and best good into all aspects of our life, right? I mean, I think that's what you do in the work that you're doing with people every day, right? And we just happen to be talking about how it works with a small piece of relationship spheres, right? But that's true in every one of the spheres that are there. So before we get around to my relationship mantra and what I ended up writing, and we might pause on some of the words in here a little bit as we're going through it, because we've got the AQ, the IQ, and the SQ that we haven't dug into. So we'll just kind of nibble around those a little bit when I go through my relationship mantra. But I wanted to come back to one thing that you said. You actually said it a couple of times now, and it really resonated with me about the vibrational frequency of the shadow state versus the light state. So, can you just talk a little bit about what you mean by that?
Yes. So any emotion that we have carries a frequency, right? So for example, in your shadow state of seriousness, the frequency is probably an intense one, right? It's probably anybody in your presence would feel like maybe tension, right? Or that they could feel that the frequency is felt, whether or not we know what's going on. And I believe we are all intuitive beings. It's just a matter of
Mm.
how attuned to our intuition are we, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
I would guess that most people, right, can be around someone and sense what's going on, right? If someone
Hmm.
they're super serious, like you can sense that, right? That's the frequency. Versus if you're in your light state of ecstasy and you're full of joy, people are going to feel that frequency from you. And
Yeah.
more than likely, are they're going to kind of take it on too, right? Because they're going to
Yes.
want that. Right. So that's what I mean by the frequency is each emotion that we have has an energy tied to it. that we call a frequency, right? That most people can feel. And it's not something that's even logical or can be explained. It's a field sense of what is truth.
Yes. I talk about it in the way I understand it, my less scientific terms than yours. Understanding you have, I talk about it simplistically as fear-based emotions versus love-based emotions.
Perfect.
And
Yeah.
I think about those, which being in an emotional state of seriousness or emotionlessness, you can see that that is, and for me, definitely was coming from a fear-based place. It's how I protected myself, right, from things that were harmful and painful to me. And
Mhm.
that's just an example of those lower emotional states. And I mean, anger, hate, I think about those are like super low vibrational frequencies that are in that fear-based emotion set, right? And that's it's interesting because they are lower vibrational frequencies, but there is a powerful intensity, like the way that it makes people feel. So I think for us, I guess the way it works is the lower vibrational state is my state if I'm the one exhibiting the
Right.
emotion, but what I'm giving to other people is like a it's like it's caustic, right? It's like it's painful, it's hitting them, right? And it's loud and obnoxious and they can feel it and not in a good way, right? I think is probably the way to describe it. Whereas when you are in the light state and you're in those love-based emotions, your own energetic frequency is higher, and so what you're putting out is calmer as opposed to the way that I would say it.
That's a beautiful way of explaining it. Yes.
You just get easier to deal with.
Very true. Yeah.
Calmer, right? And we are talking about relationships. And I think, a lot of the reason why I think this work is so important is, and particularly for people who are healing from a past where there's trauma and abuse, the majority of that, if not all of it, comes from human to human interaction, and very much of it comes from interaction with people in our life who we know, right? And there's the big stuff that we experience with people, but there are also the what I think of as, and I call the daily micro traumas that are just the painful interactions you have with someone who you're not jiving with, right? I mean, the relationship is not lined up. You're, for whatever reason, you're not where you should be as two people in a relationship together. Again, whether romantic or platonic, right? I mean, you can see it, right? And it's important to really understand that, right? As you're trying to be in relationships where you are in that calmer state, right? Where you can contribute in a calmer way, understanding more about yourself is so important. And I say this to people, when you're healing, you got to look inward, right? Healing has nothing to do with the other people. I mean, aside from the moment in time that they did whatever they did that hurt you, it has nothing to do with them, right? So if you're not in your light state, if you're not in your highest and best good, if you're not in your joy, you're not in your peace, you're not really in love, then that's all about you and what you're carrying as a result of what happened. You have to go inward to understand that and to figure it out. And that's what the healing journey is about, right? And I think that's why so much of what I hear from you and what I know everybody hears from you, because everybody who I know that knows you thinks you're an angel, wonderful, right? Because you speak so much truth to us, right? That's the power of what you do. You speak truth to who we are and give us I mean, that's going to make me a little bit emotional, right? And that you bring a different level of understanding to each of us, right? And that is so critical in being able to have healthy relationships with other people. I think at least 80%, if not more, of what's wrong with a relationship is us because we don't understand who we are and we
Yeah.
don't understand and we have no way of being able to figure out why isn't this relationship working. And our tendency is to say, well, it's that person. Well, no, it starts with us and understanding who we are first. And a lot of that has to do with understanding what our needs are as an individual, right? And maybe I'm trying to get what I need from an individual who can't give it to me. But until I understand what I need, I shouldn't be out looking for what I need, right? Or I'm going to get it wrong, right? And that's really what I think is really the gift that you're giving to all of us is that deep truth about who we are, and really where healing and relationship mastery has to start is with self from inside of us.
Yeah. And like, the truth will set you free, right? That's what I talked about.
100%.
All about liberation, right? If you
Yes.
don't become liberated if you cannot be truthful with what
Yeah.
is real. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that, I mean, there's pain in that, right? I mean, there
Yeah.
is, and for some
Mhm.
of us, there's great pain in going through that liberation process, right? I mean, and I tell people all the time that healing sucks. It's one of the worst things I ever did. It was one of the most
Yeah.
painful experiences I've ever had in my life, but it was also the most exquisite because
Mhm.
on the other side was great liberation, full freedom, right?
Truly.
And that's beautiful, really beautiful, and definitely worth the journey and worth the process.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to read my relationship mantra, what I wrote
Mhm.
down that day,
I love it. And so
and I'm
this
going
is
to
the
pause
combination of all of your relationship spheres
all
in
four of the
one
spheres.
mantra. Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. All right, so on the attraction quotient, this says, I am in my mastery. That's my light state word in the attraction quotient. I am in my mastery as the healing mentor when I magnetize attraction into my world. And that is me. So it's my mastery, right? And this is my lived experience is my mastery. My life is my laboratory, which is such a great. I keep saying I've got to go. I need to go. I got to go find that woman's name because every time I say it, I need to put her name out there. So I just need to do a post out there. Every time you hear me say this, this is who said this phrase. I'm borrowing it from her, but it's such a great phrase. My life is my
But
laboratory, and I'm like the poster child for that, I feel like. But that's what that's saying, right? I'm in my mastery as the healing mentor when I magnetize attraction to my world, right? Did I get that right?
yeah,
My
yeah,
mastery, my
beautiful.
attraction quotient, right? All right. My intellectual quotient, the word is bounteousness, which we had to talk about a little bit. I feel the most deeply connected in my relationships mentally when there's the reciprocal energy of giving freely, and that's bounteousness.
Yeah.
So let's pause on that word for a minute, bounteousness, what that means for me.
Yeah, it's this overflow. It is more than enough, right? It is such a deep love that there is more than enough for everyone. It's overflowing out of you.
Yes. And this is talking about being deeply connected in my relationships and how I feel that. And this is so profound for me because this has probably only been like in the last couple of years that I could say to people that I realize this about myself now is I sort of joke about it and say I'm not the news, weather, and sports kind of girl. And so if you think we're having like a superficial conversation about anything aligned under those three pillars, I'm probably tuning out. I'm like, yeah, I'm bored with this. I'm leaving, right? And I have this need to go super deep, and I will take people way deep in a 30-minute conversation, right? And so I need that deep connection, but I need both people to be giving it freely, right? So I need people in my life, and when I have my like when a relationship is like on fire, the other person is able to first of all not be scared of me,
True. Yeah.
right? But then also be able to engage with me at
Yeah.
that level, which is that bounteousness, right? Let's just both give and take as much as we have between us at that super deep level, right? Which
Mm.
intellectually is who I am. That's true. Very true. Another truth. All right. So we talked about the EQ, the emotional quotient. I feel the most deeply connected in my relationships emotionally when there's a frequency of great happiness. Yeah. And we talked about that one. All right. And then the sentient quotient for me, I embody pure love when I'm in the energetic state of divine inspiration. And the word was transfiguration. So, what does that mean for me?
Yeah, it's this energy of when we're tapped into God, source, universe, the divine, whatever, whatever you believe in, it's this infinite intelligence, this infinite magnetism, this infinite energy of love, truly, that alchemizes anyone and anything in its presence.
Yes. Which I think of, I think there's an element of that for every single one of us, right? And that's staying aligned to God's path for us, how we're divinely led, again, whoever that is that you believe is leading you, right? The spiritual leader of our lives, right? That's true for all of us, but for me, like literally, it's like literally like pouring out of me, like driving everything that I do when I'm in my best place, my light state, when I am interacting with other people and in relationship with other people, right? Is how I sort of understand that. Everything I do is led from divine inspiration. That is true about me.
Yep.
Right. So
Mhm.
always trying to follow that very, very closely. So yeah, so that was my relationship mantra that came out of the work that we did, which was super cool. And as you mentioned, it was a multi-week process, so we didn't get through any of this quickly. And the reflective prompts are really, I think, what help us to understand and integrate the specifics of those three words that are the light, the gift, and the shadow in each of these quotients, right? And so it is, it's not just, saying to Danielle, oh, well, go give me my human design and gene keys map, and then, tell me what the three words are on each of these spheres for me, and I'm going to go off on my merry way and hope I can figure out what it means. And you can hope, but you can't. That's what I'll tell you, right? I mean, you need someone like you who's gifted and understands this at a very deep level and can actually explain it to us. You need someone like you to help through this, right? So, you know, I just don't want anybody to think, oh, well, this is easy to understand. People think that about astrology too, which again is my frame of reference because I've done so much work there. But I also know, like, if you I mean, I can't like sit here and I can tell you what my big three are, and I can tell you that, Chiron is very active in my chart because it's the wounded healer, so I remember that, right? But there's so much going on in any aspect of who we are that I can't keep my head around all of it, right? And so it's the same with the human design and gene keys, right? There's a lot, and it literally is a map that we have, which, if any of you are interested, you can go and just Google human design and you can get your map.
Yep.
You need somebody to interpret it though. So I recommend Danielle for sure if you want to go down that road. So yeah. So I think, all of this, the work that we do to be able to show up in relationships, right? Because even knowing all of this and, knowing that the shadow state in all of our quotients for all of us is a very real thing, or in any of the spheres that we're in, any aspect of our life, that shadow state is a very real thing. There's power in knowing what the shadow state is, and then being able to understand how to get yourself out of it, which I think is the true gift of, yeah, I mean, as I said, right, the truth will set you free. I think that's the true gift of the work that you do and the information that you share with us about who we are. So I am super, super grateful for that and am very happy to know you and am excited to just keep working with you. So you are
Thank you.
wonderful. And as I said at the beginning of this, you are an angel. And if hopefully people can see that because you just have this ethereal being about you, that
Oh,
comes from the
thank you
heart. So you're a wonderful human being.
so
So
much. And so are
thank
you.
you. Thank you. And I am very grateful that you share your gift with all of us. So,
Thank you for being open to it.
oh, well, that's a good point because you do. You have to be open to it, right? And we should let's just talk about that for a minute. Being open to it. Um, because I get this question about my spirituality. I mean, I'm in Texas and, I'm in the Bible Belt, and, you're not too far out from yourself. You're in Florida, right? And we, conservative parts of the country and all of that. And I'm sure you probably maybe have encountered some of the same conversations that I've had. And I like to just sort of put it this way about my spirituality. It's very open and very broad. I've had a number of, I mean, my spiritual journey has been its own journey in and unto itself, right? And that's a product of my lived experiences. I was raised in Middle East and Southeast Asia, and so for all of my childhood years, I was in some of the most populous Muslim countries
Mm.
in the world, and I knew Christianity through missionaries, and my parents were are Christians, and so I went to Christian church. I've been baptized. I've dealt with some religious trauma in the church. I've had years where I wasn't doing anything. I was in that seriousness state in my
Yeah.
relationship with God, I would say, in my shadow state in my relationship with God, where I was just serious emotion, just like, yeah, I'm just not participating at all. I've been there. And then I've experienced the Buddhist religion, faith, more about the Islamic faith. I've experienced the Hindu faith, and I believe there are core principles. I mean, really, I believe the foundational principle in every religion is love, right? That's what I think they all come back to love, which is we're all about, right? So, I've had a long spiritual journey. I talk a lot about being divinely led, and I find that people want to put me in that box of their interpretation of their God, and so I allow that because who am I to say I mean, you describe your God one way, I describe mine another, but I mean, it's the same being. I mean, it's love. I mean, so I'm not, so I just go with it, right? Because I know that I'm divinely led and you believe you're divinely led as well. And so there's no conflict there, right? But I do run into occasions when I have two things that are, well, one of the things that I've run into is I've had someone say to me, a podcast host, you can't be on my show because you believe in astrology, and astrology is not Christian. And so, and I'm sure you've seen it. There's a Bible verse in there that people quote when they want to say that, right? And you can read about it. It's taken a little bit out of context, or you don't actually read it, right? To say worship, talking about idolatry, and I don't worship. It's not idolatrous, an idol for me, not something that I am doing from a standpoint of idolatry. For me, it is information, right, about who I am. And I say, if God, whatever God you're referring to, you believe that God made everything, owns everything, is everything, that would also be talking about our energy in the human
Yeah.
design and Gene Key's world, or the stars and the sun and the moon, the planets, if we're talking about astrology, right? And so, why is there a rejection of it when it's all God's anyhow, right? And why can't God message us and talk to us in different ways? So I don't know. What do you think about that?
I believe at the core, when we talked earlier, you talked earlier about, love-based decisions, fear-based decisions.
Mm-hmm.
At the core, if you are coming from a place of love, I think the epitome of love, true love in any form, is meeting someone exactly where they are, without judgment, without control, without saying you are not welcome here because you don't have my same belief.
Yes.
So I would argue, is that love? Is that really fully of God? If we're going to segregate and create barriers, I
Yes.
don't think so. But you know what? To each their own. Some people
Yes.
do believe that, and that's okay because I'm not trying to change their opinion. And that's what I think love is meeting someone where they are, accepting them, even if their opinion is different from yours.
Yes. And I did that. I met that person where they were, and I said, okay, thank you very much. Not for me. And just moved on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Which was
Beautiful.
my loving way of just accepting where they are. Right. But so the attempt to separate what we learn about ourselves energetically or astrologically, like the attempt to separate that for some reason. Why do you think people do that?
I think that we tend to separate from something we can't really understand. And I think it's
Mm,
easier for people
mm,
instead of facing their shadow, because that's hard work. It's just easier to just segregate and to make a statement and to just create a barrier because that was just easier. You don't have to deal with it. And that's really the problem with our world, right? Like, is we aren't a world yet. I believe we're going to be coming that world, but we aren't a world yet where the normal is diving into the shadow so that we can go back into our light.
mm.
Normal is no, 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 do not look at the shadow, pretend it is not there, erase it, just numb it out, right? And that's why you and I do the work that we do, right? The healing work to come back to truth and to
Yeah,
the totality of all of our emotion and
yeah,
all of the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. And
yeah.
it's all safe here. It's welcomed here. And let's dive in so we can alchemize the pain and actually live in love.
Yes, I agree. Let's do that. All of us. We'll be so much happier. Life will be so much better. So, do you believe that what you know to be true and the way that you help people to understand themselves, your craft, human design and gene keys, do you believe that that is fully of God and all God's design and making for each one of us?
Well, I believe that God created everything. And
Okay.
ironically, I grew up in a very, very Christian background. I still
Mm.
consider myself a Christian.
Hmm.
And I will say this, interestingly enough, of everything I've read through the Bible multiple times, you could tell me, what does this say? Give me this verse and I could probably recite it to you, right? I went to Christian grad school, Christian undergrad, grew up in church my entire life. Like I've done all the things, taught Sunday
Mm.
school my whole life, all the things, right?
Hmm.
And of all of the things that I've ever done in my walk with God, what brought me closest was actually learning my human design and my gene keys, right? Systems that sometimes people, the world labels as, quote, new age. I believe that God can use anything and anyone to transform
Hmm.
your life.
Hmm.
And for
Hmm.
me, again, all the religious studies, everything else I've ever done, what brought me closest to God and the deepest in my purpose in the world is actually uncovering my human design and my gene keys. Because now I know what my spiritual gifts are. I know my purpose in this world. I know my light. I know my shadow. I know how I help people. Before, I was just being like a good servant of the Lord because that's what the Bible says. I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't know
Yeah.
the nuance of what that was for me until I found human design and gene keys. Right. And I'm out here leading people into their liberation. And I believe that absolutely is divinely ordained.
Yes, that is, you said that so well. That is 100% my experience because it wasn't until I started to understand my life's path astrologically, which of course made me hugely open to the human design and gene keys once I knew about it and knew about you and met you, all of that has brought me much closer to God, the divine being, the one that leads my life, the one that's in control and has me here for a purpose. And this is how I've come to understand what that purpose is. It's just God talking to me. You're right. It's a system, it's a language that God has created that resonates with me, resonates with you, and helps us to understand why God even put us on this earth to begin with. Why? What is our purpose? What is the work that we're doing? So that is 100% the truth, and that is, I think, the where my spirituality lives today. I mean, I started going to church again in January of this year, and I go to three church services a week now. I go to two on
Yeah.
Sunday morning and one on Tuesday evening, right? So that journey to be connected, and all of those are Christian-based services that I'm going to, and there's a lot of energetic connection that I feel and just, I feel the Holy Spirit moving. I feel God's hand when I'm in those rooms, and I see God at work in those rooms, which is really a cool thing to see, right? So it's just a journey I keep going down. But I do think it is what you just said is so true. Is it's that level of understanding of myself based on ways that God created to communicate with us, whether it's astrology or human design, gene keys.
Yeah.
I get to now understand who I am and why God created me in the first place. And that's
Exactly.
beautiful. And that is my truth. It is so liberating.
Yeah.
100% true. Yes.
Yes.
All right. That is a great place to end our conversation. I'm glad we took a minute to go down that road. So yeah, that's fun. Okay. Will you please tell the audience how they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at my website, which is danielle-laura.com. You can also find me on pretty much any of the social medias. My handle is underscore Danielle Laura underscore.
And I will be dropping all of that in the show notes. And when I go to promote the episode, of course, you'll be linked on all of those posts. So you'll be able to see where to find her directly because she'll be linked in the post. So, all right. This has been delightful. I'm so glad we did this.
Thank you so much for having me, Beth. I
Yeah, it
loved our
was a lot of fun.
conversation, and I'm so excited for everything you're doing in the world.
Oh, thank you. Me too. I appreciate it. And I'm super grateful for your help. And as I've said twice now, I'm going to say it a third time. This world is blessed to have you in it. So thank you very much for sharing your gifts with
Same for
us.
you. Thanks.
All right. Until next time, everyone, keep healing. I hope you have enjoyed today's episode of Let's Heal with Beth Jones. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel at Beth Jones Healing Mentor. And if you'd like to know more about me and my work to help other survivors to heal, please visit me on the web at empoweredsurvivors.com.